My story begins on the day of my father's funeral, though the roots of it go back far longer than that. If I'm being honest, I think I knew deep down for years that my relationship with my family was fractured beyond repair. But funerals have a strange way of tearing off the last bits of tape, holding everything together. They expose what people really think, who they really care about, and just how shallow blood ties can be. I used to believe that family was everything. I don't anymore. My name isn't important, and I'm not writing this for pity or validation. I'm writing because I've carried this story alone for too long, and maybe putting it out there will help me finally close the door on all of them. I'm the middle child, classic middle child syndrome. I guess my older brother, Daniel, was the golden boy, firstborn, straight-A student, football team captain, the one my parents pinned all their hopes on. My younger sister, Emily, was the baby, the delicate one, always needing to be protected and coddled. And me, I was just there, not a screw-up, not a prodigy, just background noise. Growing up, the favoritism wasn't always obvious, but it was definitely there. Daniel could do no wrong. When he totaled our family's second car at 17, my dad called it a learning moment. When I forgot to take the trash out one week, I was lazy and ungrateful and grounded for a month. Emily never had chores at all. I remember once when I was 14, I stayed up all night baking a cake for my mom's birthday. Emily came downstairs in the morning, added some sprinkles on top, and Mom smiled and told her she was so thoughtful. She didn't even acknowledge I made the whole damn cake. I didn't fight it then. I accepted it the way kids accept things they can't change. I tried harder, studied more, kept to myself, hoping that if I just became low maintenance enough, I'd be appreciated for not being a problem. But in this family, invisibility wasn't rewarded. It was taken for granted. I moved out the minute I turned 18. No big blow-up, no dramatic departure. I just packed my things and left for college, funded entirely by scholarships and part-time jobs because my parents said they were tapped out after helping Daniel with his tuition. He dropped out after a year and still got to move back home rent-free. When I needed a place to stay during a rough patch in my early 20s, my mom told me it would disrupt Emily's anxiety if I stayed in the guest room. I kept my distance after that. I still showed up for birthdays, holidays, the occasional family dinner, mostly out of guilt. My parents always said things like, "You never call or you're so distant," but they never asked why. They never wanted to talk about the years of neglect, the favoritism, the way I always had to beg for scraps of affection while my siblings were drowning in it. And I didn't push. I thought keeping the peace was more important. I thought maybe time would fix it. Time did not fix it. When Dad got sick, everything fell apart fast. Pancreatic cancer. He was gone in less than 6 months. I offered to help with hospital visits, paperwork, anything they needed. But I was always kept in the loop last. Daniel handled everything, because of course he did. Emily posted emotional tributes on Facebook and organized a prayer chain. I sent money quietly because I knew medical bills were piling up and nobody else seemed to be worrying about that part. Nobody even said thank you. At the funeral, something inside me snapped. It wasn't one moment, not one insult or slight. It was everything. The culmination of 30 years of being overlooked, dismissed, minimized. My mom asked me to sit in the third row, behind Daniel's wife and kids, behind Emily's college roommate. I was blood, but apparently not enough. She said it was because the front row was reserved for immediate family. I stood there in my black dress, holding back tears, and realized I wasn't even considered immediate family at my own father's funeral. I sat in the back. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I watched as Daniel gave a speech about what a great man Dad was, how he taught us all about strength and integrity. I wanted to scream, integrity. This was the same man who once told me I wasn't daughter material, because I refused to wear dresses. But sure, let's rewrite history. After the funeral, everyone gathered at the house. I went because I thought maybe someone would want to talk. Maybe grief would strip away the walls we built. Maybe my mom would look at me and see her middle child standing there, raw and broken. Instead, I walked into a kitchen full of laughter, casserole dishes, and gossip about Emily's new boyfriend. Not one person asked how I was doing. Not one person acknowledged me. Then came the inheritance reading. Daniel was named executor of the will. Of course, nobody even questioned it. It was like an unspoken rule that Daniel would always be trusted, always be the one handed the keys to everything. I didn't expect much. I wasn't after money. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. Like maybe in the end, my father had remembered that he had more than one child worth leaving something meaningful to. I didn't need a fortune. I didn't need the house or the car. Just a letter maybe, a trinket, a token, something that said, "I see you." When the lawyer read the will, my stomach dropped. Daniel got the house. That was expected. Emily got the savings account, all $70,000 of it, which was supposedly meant to cover her future wedding and mental health needs. I was left with a set of cufflinks and a dusty photo album from the attic, one that didn't even have pictures of me in it. I held it in my lap like it was radioactive. I remember flipping through it in disbelief. Page after page of Daniel's football games, Emily's ballet recitals, vacations I hadn't been invited on. My face appeared exactly 3 times. One was a blurry shot of me at 7, half out of frame. I stared at that photo for a long time, feeling like a ghost in my own family's history. After the reading, my mom pulled me aside. She gave me this condescending smile, the kind people use when they're trying to seem nice, but don't actually care what you feel. She told me she hoped I understood that Dad made his choices with love, and that I should be happy for my siblings. She said the photo album was full of memories, as if I hadn't just witnessed my erasure from them. I nodded, I smiled back, I said nothing. But inside, something had finally broken clean through. That night, I packed my things and left without saying goodbye. I blocked every number. I deleted the family group chat. I didn't announce it. I didn't post a dramatic farewell on social media. I simply disappeared from their lives like they had taught me. I didn't belong in them anyway. It's been over a year since that day. No one has reached out, not even once. I wish I could say I miss them. I wish I could say I ache for reconnection, for resolution, but I don't. What I feel is relief. Peace for the first time in my life. I am not orbiting around people who never made room for me. I have friends now who feel more like family than my blood ever did. I've learned how to be visible, how to matter, how to love myself without needing scraps of affection from people who rationed it like currency. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if they did reach out. If Daniel called, full of regret. If my mom sent a letter. But the truth is, I think I'd ignore it. Because once you see the truth, really see it, you can't unsee it. And I saw it clearly, in the silence of that back row at the funeral, in the empty pages of that photo album. I was never part of that family the way I thought I was, and that's okay now. But that's not even the most painful part of the story. That's just the beginning, because 6 months after I went no contact, I found out something that made everything make sense and shattered me all over again. Something I wasn't supposed to know. It started with a message request on Facebook, a name I didn't recognize, a woman in her 60s named Helen. She said she had something important to tell me about my dad. I almost ignored it, thought it was a scam, but something about the way she worded it felt real. Not spammy, not dramatic, just quiet urgency. She said she had waited until after he passed out of respect, but that I had a right to know. She told me she was my aunt, my father's half-sister. I didn't even know he had a half-sister. She asked if we could talk, and despite myself, I agreed. I didn't know what I was expecting. A long-lost family member trying to bond. Some twisted secret. What I got was both and more. Helen told me that my father had another child before he met my mother. A daughter. She died when she was 12 in a car accident. Years before I was born. Her name was Grace. My father had never spoken of her, not even to my mother, apparently. Helen said he had never recovered, that he had always carried a guilt so deep it changed who he was. She said I looked just like Grace. I didn't believe her at first. It sounded insane, but she sent photos. Old ones, yellowed with time. And there she was, Grace, a little girl with my eyes, my smile, even my crooked front tooth. I stared at those pictures for hours, and slowly it started to make sense. Maybe I reminded him too much of the daughter he lost. Maybe that's why he could never look at me the same way. Maybe that's why he kept his distance, gave me less, made me feel like a placeholder or a mistake. Maybe loving me felt like betrayal to the memory of Grace. Or maybe it hurt too much, I don't know. I'll never know. But what I do know is that I spent my whole life competing with ghosts. I asked Helen if she had any more photos, any letters, anything. She sent me a small package a week later, Grace's old necklace, a few birthday cards my father had written to her, and a journal she kept. I read that journal like it was a sacred text. And weirdly it helped. Grace was kind. She was funny, she was bright. She wrote about wanting a little sister. She wrote about loving animals and dreaming of being a vet. She wasn't just a shadow anymore, she was real. For the first time, I felt connected to someone in my family, and she was the one person I'd never met. I kept the necklace in a small wooden box by my bed. It was nothing expensive, just a simple chain with a heart-shaped pendant, slightly tarnished from age. But I wore it some days when I felt the weight of my family's absence pressing too hard. It reminded me that maybe the rejection I experienced wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was about wounds that never healed, and a man who never figured out how to love again, after losing the first child he ever bonded with. I didn't forgive him, I'm not sure I ever will. Understanding someone's reasons doesn't erase the pain they caused. But it did shift something inside me. I stopped thinking of myself as defective. I stopped replaying every moment I was ignored or dismissed, wondering what I could have done differently. Grace existed, she was loved, and she was lost, and in the fallout, I was born into a broken blueprint my father didn't know how to fix. As for my mother, I started to question what she knew. How could you be married to someone for 30 years and never know about a child they lost? I didn't reach out, but I found myself looking through public records, piecing together timelines. I found the obituary. Grace Ann Wells died in 1985, survived by her mother, Margaret, and her Aunt Helen. No mention of my father. I don't know if that was by choice or circumstance. What struck me most was how carefully it seemed erased from every narrative I had ever been told. I wondered if Daniel or Emily knew. I doubted it never came up, and knowing how Daniel clung to the idea of our father as some perfect patriarch, I could imagine him being either in denial or outright dismissive. But I didn't care, not anymore. That part of my life, the part where I tried to understand them, tried to be understood, it was over. Instead, I poured myself into rebuilding something new. I started therapy. Weekly sessions where I unpacked years of emotional suppression like unpacking a closet filled with moldy memories. I talked about the Christmases where I got socks, while my siblings got tablets. The birthdays where my cake was an afterthought. The way my mom used to sigh when I walked into the room, like I was already a burden before I even spoke. I cried a lot, then I got angry. Then I got quiet, then finally, I started to feel whole again. Around the same time, I reconnected with an old college friend. Rachel. She was the kind of person who could make a grocery run feel like a therapy session, and a movie night feel like a sacred ritual. She listened. She didn't flinch when I said things like, "I don't think my mother ever liked me." She didn't try to fix it. She just stayed. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until I had it. We started spending more time together. Coffee runs turned into weekend trips. Phone calls into sleepovers. It wasn't romantic, but it was intimate in all the ways I had lacked growing up. I told her about Grace. I showed her the journal. She cried when she read it, too. She said it made sense now, the ache I carried, the emptiness. She told me I was grieving not just my childhood, but a sister I never got to meet, and she was right. One day, months later, Rachel asked if I'd ever consider writing about it. Not on Reddit, not just for strangers, but really writing, a book, a memoir, something to hold and say, this is what surviving looks like. I laughed it off at first. Who would want to read that? Who was I to write a book? But the idea stuck. I started writing in the quiet hours of the night. At first it was messy, disjointed paragraphs, angry rants, letters to my father I'd never send. But over time it took shape. It became a story, not just about neglect or loss, but about what it means to untangle yourself from a legacy that was never built to include you. About making peace with not being chosen. About choosing yourself anyway. I didn't tell my family. I didn't need their permission. I wasn't looking for confrontation. I was looking for closure. Then one morning, almost 2 years after I'd gone no contact, I got an email, no subject line, no introduction, just a single sentence, "You made your point. Can you come home now?" It was from my mother. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement. It was a demand wrapped in passive aggression, the kind of message that tried to frame me as the dramatic one, the runaway child who needed to stop sulking. I didn't respond. 3 days later, another email came. This one longer. She said she didn't understand why I was still angry. She said Daniel and Emily missed me. She said life was short and holding grudges was pointless. Still no mention of the inheritance. Still no mention of Grace. Still no "I'm sorry." I almost deleted it, but something in me wanted to know what she thought she was fixing. So I replied, not with anger, but with the clarity I had gained in her absence. I told her that silence wasn't peace, that pretending nothing happened wasn't healing. That missing someone doesn't excuse a lifetime of exclusion. I told her about Grace, about Helen, about the photo album, and the back row of the funeral. I told her that I had found more family in a dead girl's journal than I ever did in her living room. I didn't accuse or insult. I just laid the truth bare. She never replied, and I was okay with that, because by then, I had finally learned that closure isn't something they give you. It's something you create for yourself. I published the memoir a few months later. Self-published, nothing flashy, just a simple paperback with a soft cover, and a title that only made sense once you'd read the last chapter. I called it The Empty Frame. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't go viral, but the people who read it, really read it, sent messages that made it all worth it. Strangers who said they felt seen. Adults who confessed they still cried over birthday parties that never happened. Hugs that were never given. Parents who loved them in theory but not in practice. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Lena. She said she had grown up the middle child in a household where she was the invisible one. She said she never had words for it until she read mine. That she had spent her whole adult life wondering what was wrong with her. And for the first time, she felt like maybe the answer wasn't everything. I cried reading her email, then I replied, and so began a slow exchange of letters between two people who had never met, but had lived parallel lives. We still write each other, once a month, sometimes more. Her letters feel like a tether to a world where love is quiet but solid. And family isn't just blood, it's recognition. Daniel did reach out once, through Rachel. Of all people, I hadn't realized they still followed each other on Instagram. He saw a picture she posted of me at her birthday dinner. I was laughing, wearing Grace's necklace. He messaged her asking if I was okay, if I was still mad. She asked if I wanted to reply. I said no. A week later, a package arrived at my door. No note, just a small box, and inside, the blurry photograph of me as a child, the one from the photo album, but reframed. Professionally, carefully, almost lovingly. Behind it was a folded piece of paper with one line, "I should have seen you." I didn't know if it was from Daniel or my mother. Maybe both, it didn't matter. I kept the frame, I didn't forgive them, but I placed it on my shelf, not as a memento of pain, but as proof that I had been there, that I had existed in that family, even if only barely, that I had taken root and grown despite the drought. Years have passed now. I live in a small cottage by the sea. It's quiet here, peaceful. I tend a garden in the back. I adopted an old dog named Penny, who follows me around like a shadow. I teach writing classes online. Nothing glamorous, but it's mine. It's a life I built from scraps and silence, stitched together like a quilt of everything I was denied. Sometimes I walk along the shore at sunrise, the necklace cool against my chest, and think of Grace. I imagine her as she might have grown, smart, strong, sharp-eyed. Maybe we would have fought as sisters. Maybe we would have shared secrets. Maybe she would have been my protector. Or I hers, I don't know, but I do know she would have seen me. I feel that, and in some way I think she does now. I haven't spoken to my mother in over 4 years. I don't plan to, not because I'm bitter, but because I've outgrown the need to be understood by someone who refuses to see. Daniel sends a holiday card once a year. I don't respond. Emily never reached out. Maybe she's still living in that old house, clinging to the lie that everything was fair, that love was evenly divided. Maybe that lie is easier than facing the truth. I'm not angry anymore, not really. Just tired. Tired of people thinking family means unconditional loyalty, no matter the damage. Tired of pretending that blood guarantees love. It doesn't, it never did. What I have now is real, it's chosen. My little circle of people, Rachel, Lena, a few others, they've seen the worst of me and stayed. They don't need me to be perfect. They don't punish me with silence or hold affection like ransom. They love me in the soft, consistent ways that matter most. And that to me is family. So no, I won't be coming home, because I am home now, in this quiet life. In this body I've learned to love. In the memories I've made, the ones I've reclaimed. The story I wrote not to get back at anyone, but to free myself from the weight of being unwanted. If you're reading this, and you've ever felt like the invisible one, let me say this to you, I see you. You matter, you always did, and one day, you'll build a life so full of love that the empty chairs at your old table won't hurt anymore. They'll just be reminders of how far you've come. And when that day comes, I hope you sit at your new table, surrounded by laughter, by chosen family, by peace, and realize that the ones who couldn't see your worth never deserved a front row seat to your story anyway. Because you, my dear, were never the problem. They just refused to see the light in you. But I see it, and so will others. The right ones, the real ones. And that is enough.